Hello. All right. Yeah. Hi. I am bored, or just a college student in summer, so I've decided to do this World Cup check-in or whatever for the 2018 World Cup, which, if you didn't know, is coming up in roughly 2 weeks. It's what, the 30th right now on time of recording. I'll probably put this up tomorrow. I think today's Wednesday. I don't know. I'm getting in that college brain where schedules don't matter anymore. My plan is just to do this for the 30 days that the World Cup is on, and to try and keep you all informed on Facebook via my YouTube channel because it's easier. I'll try and just sort of keep you up to date on what's going on in the World Cup, and just kind of, keep it as simple as possible for anybody who's interested and or just mildly curious or whatever it is. So also it's kind of blatant propaganda because I love soccer or football, as I'll probably refer to it eventually. Real football, not American football. Sorry, but it's essentially going to be blatant propaganda from me to you, saying watch the World Cup, watch it. It only comes around every 4 years, so it's not like the Super Bowl. It is the biggest sporting event in the world ever. Everybody's going to be talking about it, and so it's good to stay informed, and hopefully I'll be able to provide at least some sort of context and understanding. And if you're bored on a morning and turn on the TV and you see World Cup, you might actually understand what's going on. So that's kind of my purpose for doing this and all of that. Hopefully I'll keep these videos roughly, I would say, under 20 minutes each, just so that it's easier to digest, and it's just something that you can turn on in the morning if you're doing it. So yeah, I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible, but if you have any further questions, put them in the comments of YouTube or in the Facebook, and I'll be able to either answer them there or in a following video. Early on in the World Cup, as we'll get into, this will be kind of a really rapid series just because of the sheer amount of games that are going on. The sheer amount of games that are going on every day, and then as time progresses, there's more time in between games of having actual games. I believe the total is like 64 games this for this go around, and I think that'll be the last time. But yeah, so here we go. We're going to start with our first sort of talking point, and that's if you haven't read the title, which I'm assuming you have. Yeah, bad news. The U.S. isn't in this World Cup. So if you didn't know that, that was solidified about 8 months ago to the horror, depression, sadness, angst of all the people who are watching, myself included. It was not a fun night. We can go into that if you want, but essentially we almost did, and almost qualified, because the way the World Cup is because not every nation can go to the World Cup. There are like 200-ish, around that number of nations recognized by FIFA, and so only 32 right now get in, so they have to weed them out, and so small countries pretty much don't have a shot. They have to play, and you have to qualify, you have to win matches, and yada 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 yada. The U.S. didn't do that, and so yeah, we're not going to Russia, which arguably is a good thing for the U.S. team, given the current political climate, but it still sucks because we've got some pretty good talents on the team, and it's going to be sad. For sort of a look into those talents, we had a game 2 nights ago, Memorial Day, where we had basically a bunch of kids, soccer kids, in the term, which is basically the average age for the starting lineup was like 22 years old. Typically, a soccer team will be like like 28-ish, 27-ish, that era, because you've got like some of the veterans, like the captain and all that. Goalkeepers typically push ages up closer to 40, depending on the country and who they're representing. But yeah, so we had a game then. We've got a game this Saturday for the U.S. For the men's team, and it's just a friendly. And for, if you don't know, friendly is just basically it's a pickup game for international teams. So we've got Ireland this Saturday, and then I think a few days later, maybe on Tuesday, they typically do that on the Tuesday. We get to go play France. The timing on those matches is going to be probably afternoon, like early afternoon to maybe the morning, because they're playing in Ireland and France respectively. But yeah, so you'll see a bunch of young kids. If you want to turn on the TV on Saturday, you'll see a bunch of young American kids that you have no idea who they are because they've only played 1 or 2 games. There's a few exciting talents there. The son of the current president of Liberia, Tim Weah, is kind of a big thing, but I could talk all day about the U.S. team and all that. But suffice to say, if you're interested in the U.S. This summer to watch, there are those games. On the women's side, we could go into that later on in August, I think, is the next games. Actually, there's some games with China coming up. You can Google them. So yeah, the U.S. didn't make it. It's sad, but oh well. The next one comes around, World Cup qualifying, probably in, a year or so. There's, tournaments, the Gold Cup in next summer is a thing, but for now it sucks, and the next one isn't for 4 years, so we'll see. Oh well. Now, on to the topic of the World Cup, or at least the thing that's going to happen before the World Cup, and that's on June 13th. The World Cup starts on the 14th. With the first match. However, FIFA has to get through the bid process, and the way they've done it this year, they've probably done it different in the past, but the way they're doing it this year is for the World Cup in 2026, so 8 years from now, they have a vote, and at least right now, it's between all of the nations recognized by FIFA. So roughly, I think 200 and some. I think it's like 203. That sounds about right. There are 2 bids currently going on, and one of them is Mexico, a joint bid between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. The opposing bid is for Morocco. So, because the World Cup in 2026 is going to be the first, maybe there's something going on with the Qatar one in 2022, but it's going to be the first expanded 48-team World Cup, which means there's going to be 80 games instead of the 60 that are going on in the current format, which, there's arguments towards that. Regardless, the U.S. could technically host this World Cup with all the big stadiums and all the things, they could hold it today, but it's going to be 8 years from now. So, from my understanding of it, FIFA and all the organizations, except for the proposed bids, so Mexico, U.S. and Canada can't vote, and Morocco can't vote. So it's essentially get as many countries to vote for your World Cup as possible. That'll be on June 13th, and that's kind of a big thing, at least for me, because the World Cup would primarily be held in the U.S. The distribution is 10 games in Canada, 10 games in Mexico, and those are all going to be group games, and then the big games, the finals, knockout stages, and some group stages will be in the U.S. So that's obviously something that would be really cool. The last time it was held in the U.S. was 1994. Some of you might know that. Some of you are, like me, weren't even around during that time. So that's sort of the big talking point right now. As far as the chances, it's kind of hazy between the U.S. and Morocco. There's been sort of some rumblings that the U.S. might get the edge. The edge, or like this joint bid is really, it should really win. We should win, but then again, we should have won in Trinidad and Tobago to qualify for the World Cup, but we didn't. So, anyway. So we should win this bid just by the fact that it'll be probably one of the easiest World Cups to host. It'll be the most profitable, most attended, and by the way, the last one that was most profitable and or most attended was the one held in 1994, so in the U.S. So there's precedent there, and we could expand that even more. So we could get that bid, but we could also lose because it's FIFA, and FIFA are notoriously what they are. So as far as what I know, I believe CONMEBOL, which is the sort of area of South America, I think it's just purely South America, they have put their support behind the U.S. joint bid because obviously they're in the same time zone, and it's closer, so they're easier to get to. I believe CONCACAF, which is the what do you call them? Just sort of the organization or the federation that the U.S. is in, Mexico and everybody else, sort of the North America continent and the Caribbean. Most of them have put their support behind the U.S. joint bid, or at least that's the expected thing, is that, obviously they'll put it behind there because it's closer and yada yada. Two nations, however, haven't. They're like French colonies, or like former French colony type things, or French territories right now. France itself has put its bid behind Morocco, but that's because they used to own it, so there's some political things around there. And yeah, so it's essentially between Asia, Africa, and Europe. The various federations are I think I don't really know what they are. I know UEFA is the European one, but it's essentially between those nations. Some African nations have apparently put their support behind the U.S., which is a good thing, because the more people from, Africa and Europe, or more countries that support the U.S. bid, the better it is going to be for us, and the same goes for Asia. So we'll see how that goes. And I could be very depressed in doing this series, if I'm going to be completely honest, if we don't get it, because, I'm obsessed. So, yeah, so that's what's coming up on June 13th. It'll probably be televised on Fox. I'd be surprised if it weren't. It would probably be maybe in the morning. It would probably be around 9 or 10 in the morning. So if you hear massive shouting and or sobs from my location, you'll know why. Now, to the actual World Cup. So the 2018 World Cup is in Russia, which is why there's that massive time differential. So I think I want to say it's 8 hours difference, but I have no backing. In fact, I have my computer, so I'm going to Google that right now. Russia time difference to U.S. World Cup. Look, other people have searched for it. There's an interactive map, too. All right, so if it's 8:42 in the Moscow region, yep, 12:42 in Chicago. So yes, it's 8 hours from Central Time, 7 if you're in Eastern Time, and if you're in Mountain Time, well, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm just, scale with the U.S. times. So yeah, so it's in Russia, and as I said before, the World Cup format, and I'll probably put graphics and things up here if I can figure out how to do that on Windows Movie Maker. But essentially, it's there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 groups of 4 teams each. So 8 times 4, 32 teams. There are 32 nations that are in. The groups are all determined by a draw. That happened a few months ago. And essentially they have this specific system. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is who's in the groups and who are going to play. So the first match is June 14th, and that's between the host nation, Russia, and another team, which is Saudi Arabia. So I can get into, I'll probably get into all of that stuff later. I've already talked for a lot. But the basic things you need to know about the World Cup in this format is you've got 32 teams in 8 groups. The knockout stage only allows for 16 teams. We're going to go to a round of 16. So that means that only the top 2 teams from each group will advance. Now, if you don't know, the way that soccer does its point system is a win is worth 3 points and a draw is worth 1 point. Yes, you can draw, and if you lose, you get 0 points. So, essentially, each team in each group will play the other team in its group 1 time. So you got 3 games to play. And at the end of those group stage, the team that has the most points, who's won the most, who's drawn, who hasn't lost, essentially will advance to the next round. Now, place does matter because it determines who you get placed up against. So, for example, I believe like the winner of Group A would play maybe like the second place of Group B or another group. So it does sort of help to win your group, but it doesn't. I mean, it's going to be real tough. I mean, the teams that are advancing are probably going to be pretty strong regardless. So once that happens, you got the round of 16, and then I believe each team, it's just 1 game, winner take all, and you move on to the next round. Probably they'll do extra time. In fact, I know they'll do extra time first. So each soccer game, it's 90 minutes, 45 minutes per half, and then you've got extra time after that, which is if it's still level, and meaning the same points or same amount of goals or none, then you'll go to extra time, which is 2 15-minute halves. After that, it'll go to penalty kicks, and whoever wins from there advances all the way down until the semifinal, or till the finals, where the semifinals, where the winners will go play for the final to be crowned the World Cup champions, and then the losers of the 2 semifinal games play for 3rd place. So that's pretty much all I've got for now. I might release. Well, I'll talk about the group stages individually here in a bit. I'll probably just keep going, and then my full predictions as well. So thanks for watching. If you've got any further questions, like I said, just put them in the comments of either the Facebook or whatever, and then we'll get this ball rolling.